There's a difference between knowing an empire will collapse and knowing what the collapse actually looks like. Most people think imperial collapse is slow, gradual decline over decades, gentle slide into irrelevance. That's not what happens. When empires collapse, they collapse fast, violently, and the people living through it don't see it coming until it's too late. In 410 AD, Rome was still the eternal city, unconquered for 800 years. 3 days later, it was burning. Visigoths were looting the temples. Citizens were fleeing with whatever they could carry. The empire that ruled the world for 5 centuries was dying in real time, and the Romans couldn't believe it was happening. In June 1940, France was celebrating the strongest military in Europe. The Maginot Line was impregnable. By the end of June, German tanks were rolling through Paris. The government had fled. France surrendered. For weeks, that's how long it took for a superpower to become a puppet state. In December 1991, Mikhail Gorbachev was still president of the Soviet Union, a superpower with 30,000 nuclear weapons. By December 26, the Soviet Union didn't exist, 900 days from Berlin Wall to complete dissolution. Nobody saw it coming that fast. 3 empires, 3 collapses, each faster than the last. And here's what should terrify you. The collapse doesn't happen when you expect it. It happens suddenly, violently, and by the time people realize it's happening, it's already over. This is the story of what imperial collapse actually looks like. Not the long decline, the final collapse. The moment when reputation dies and reality hits. The 6 phases of the end, and why every warning sign says America is approaching that moment faster than anyone wants to admit. Before we go through what collapse looks like, you need to understand why it happens so fast. Why empires that seem stable can disintegrate in months or even days. The answer is leverage and confidence. Empires don't run on resources, they run on confidence. Confidence that the currency is valuable. Confidence that the military can protect you. Confidence that the government can maintain order. Confidence that tomorrow will be like today. That confidence is fragile, and when it breaks, everything breaks at once. Think of it like a dam. For years, cracks form. Water seeps through. Engineers see the problems, but say it's manageable. The dam still holds. People living below it go about their lives. They see the dam every day. It's always been there. It'll always be there. Then one day, a crack widens, water pressure increases, and suddenly the whole structure fails. Not slowly, all at once. The water doesn't gradually increase, it's a wall, and everyone below the dam has minutes, not hours. That's what imperial collapse looks like. The empire is the dam. The pressure is debt, military overextension, currency debasement, social decay. The cracks have been forming for years, but the dam still holds until it doesn't, and when it goes all at once. Let's look at how it actually happened, not the decades of decline, the collapse itself, the moment when everything that seemed stable fell apart. We'll look at 3 empires at their moment of collapse. Rome in 410 AD, France in 1940, the Soviet Union in 1991. Not the entire history, just the collapse phase, the final days. Because understanding what the end looks like is the only way to recognize it when it's happening to you. Rome for 10 AD. By the late 300s, Rome was in decline. Everyone knew it. Barbarian tribes were raiding the borders, the military was weaker, the currency was debased, but Rome was still Rome. The city itself had never fallen, not in 800 years. Romans believed the city was eternal, protected by the gods, invincible. In 408 AD, Alaric the Visigoth and his army surrounded Rome. He demanded payment, gold, silver, and supplies. Rome paid. Alaric left. Crisis averted. The city was saved. In 409, Alaric came back. More demands. Rome paid again. Another crisis averted. But Rome's treasury was running dry. They couldn't keep paying, and Alaric knew it. August 24, 410 AD, Alaric's army entered Rome, not through battle, through betrayal. Slaves inside the city opened the gates. The Visigoths poured in. For 3 days they looted. Temples were stripped of gold. Aristocrats were ransomed or killed. Citizens fled with whatever they could carry. The city that had stood for 800 years was burning, and when Ala left, Rome was a shell. The sack of Rome wasn't a military defeat. The Roman legions weren't even there too. Defended, they were scattered across the empire fighting other threats. The city fell because Rome couldn't pay its defenders anymore, couldn't bribe the barbarians, couldn't maintain the system, and once the reputation of invincibility died, the empire died with it. Nobody thought it could happen, right up until it did. The collapse took 3 days. But the shock lasted forever, because once Rome fell, every other part of the empire knew if Rome itself could fall, nothing was safe. And within 66 years, the Western Roman Empire was gone. Here's what people living through it experienced. If you were a Roman citizen in 410, your life was collapsing in real time. Your currency was worthless. The denarius you'd saved was debased to almost nothing. Your property had no value. Who's buying real estate in a burning city? Your social status meant nothing. Aristocrats were being ransomed or killed. Your government couldn't protect you. The legions were gone. You had three choices: stay and hope you survive, flee and become a refugee, or collaborate with the Visigoths and hope they spare you. That's what collapse looks like. Not gradual decline. Sudden chaos where everything you trusted fails at once. France, 1940. By 1939, everyone knew war was coming. Germany was rearming. Hitler was aggressive, but France was confident. They had the Magno Line, the strongest army in Europe, alliances with Britain. They'd beaten Germany before in World War I, they'd do it again. May 10, 1940, Germany invaded, not through the Maginot Line, through Belgium and the Ardennes Forest. French command said tanks couldn't move through that terrain. They were wrong. Within a week, German panzers had broken through. French defenses collapsed. The British Expeditionary Force was trapped at Dunkirk. By June 10th, the French government fled Paris. By June 14th, German troops entered Paris without resistance. By June 22nd, France surrendered. 6 weeks from invasion to surrender. 6 weeks from invasion to surrender. 6 weeks. The strongest military in Europe didn't just lose, it disintegrated. French soldiers abandoned their posts, officers fled, entire divisions surrendered without fighting. The government that had ruled an empire collapsed into a puppet regime based in Vichy, and French citizens watched their world end in real time. Here's what it looked like on the ground. If you were French in June 1940, everything collapsed simultaneously. The military couldn't defend you. The government fled and left you behind. Refugees clogged the roads, fleeing south. Millions of people with nowhere to go. German troops were occupying Paris. Your savings worthless. The French economy was now controlled by Germany. Your property could be confiscated, your freedom gone. France went from superpower to occupied territory in 6 weeks, and the French people couldn't process it. They believed their country was invincible right up until it wasn't. The psychological shock was devastating because when an empire falls, it's not just the government that collapses. It's the entire worldview of the people living in it. Everything you believed about your country, your safety, your future gone. And it happens so fast you can't adjust. Soviet Union, 1991. By 1989, everyone knew the USSR was in trouble. The economy was failing. Eastern Europe was restless. But the Soviet Union was still a superpower. Nuclear weapons, a massive military, a permanent seat on the UN Security Council. It had been the other superpower for 45 years. People assumed it would last forever. Even as problems mounted, nobody expected total collapse. November 9, 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. East Germany collapsed. The Soviet government didn't intervene. They couldn't afford to. For the next year, Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Romania, all left. The Soviet Empire was crumbling. But the Soviet Union itself still existed. The core was still there. Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, the Central Asian republics that would hold. It had to. It didn't. August 1991, hardline communists attempted a coup. They wanted to restore Soviet power. The coup failed. Not because the Soviet military stopped it. Because soldiers refused to fire on civilians. The military, which had held the Soviet Union together, no longer obeyed orders. Boris Yeltsin, president of the Russian Republic, became the de facto leader. Gorbachev, president of the Soviet Union, was irrelevant. By December 1991, the Soviet republics were leaving one by one. Ukraine declared independence. Belarus, Kazakhstan. By December 25, Gorbachev resigned. On December 26, 1991, the Soviet Union officially ceased to exist. 900 days from the Berlin Wall to complete dissolution, a superpower with 30,000 nuclear weapons disappeared. Not from war, from economic collapse, from loss of confidence, from the realization that the system couldn't function anymore. Here's what Soviet citizens experienced. Your country disappeared. The government you'd lived under for 70 years was gone. Your currency, the ruble, was worthless. Hyperinflation hit immediately. Savings evaporated. Pensions became meaningless. The system that guaranteed employment, housing and food was gone. Factories closed, unemployment exploded, crime surged because the state couldn't pay police, the military couldn't be paid. Soldiers sold weapons to survive. Some regions descended into warlord rule. If you were a Soviet citizen in 1991, your world ended, and it happened in less than 3 years. From superpower to failed state, that fast. 3 collapses. Rome, France, the Soviet Union. Each one thought it couldn't happen to them. Each one was wrong, and each collapse followed the same sequence. Let me show you the 6 phases, because once you understand the pattern, you'll recognize it when it's happening, and it's starting to happen now. Phase 1, the denial phase. The empire is clearly in decline. Debt is massive. Military is overextended. Currency is being debased. Social problems are mounting. But the government, the media, and the elites insist everything is fine. We've been through worse. We'll recover. This is temporary. We're still the most powerful nation on earth. Citizens want to believe it, so they do. They ignore the warning signs. They trust the system because the alternative that their empire is collapsing is too terrifying to accept. Rome was in denial. From 350 AD to 410 AD, 60 years of decline where everyone said it was manageable. France was in denial from 1919 to 1940, 20 years of pretending they were still a superpower. The Soviet Union was in denial from 1970 to 1989, 19 years of insisting communism would prevail. The denial phase lasts until reality forces itself into view, and when it does, the collapse accelerates. Phase 2, the credibility break. This is the moment when the empire's reputation dies. A military defeat that shouldn't have happened. An economic crisis that reveals the currency is worthless. A political, the event that shows the government has no control. For Rome, it was the Battle of Adrianople in 378 AD. The invincible legions were destroyed. The emperor died. Rome's military reputation shattered. For France, it was the fall of Paris in 1940. The strongest army in Europe collapsed in 6 weeks. For the Soviet Union, it was Afghanistan. 10 years of war, they lost. The invincible Red Army was beaten by farmers with rifles. The credibility break is the moment when allies, enemies, and citizens realize the empire is hollow, that the reputation was covering decay, and once credibility breaks, it cannot be rebuilt. Phase 3, the cascade. After the credibility break, everything fails at once. Allies abandon the empire. They make deals with rivals. They stop trusting guarantees. Enemies act with impunity. They test the empire's red lines and discover there are no consequences. The currency loses value rapidly. Inflation accelerates. Foreign holders dump the currency. The domestic population loses faith. The government can't control the narrative anymore. Social cohesion breaks down. Protests, riots, crime. People realize the government can't protect them. This phase is terrifying because it's non-linear. The collapse accelerates exponentially. Rome's cascade was 410 to 476 AD, 66 years of disintegration. France's cascade was June 1940, 4 weeks from invasion to surrender. The Soviet Union's cascade was 1989 to 1991, 900 days from Berlin Wall to dissolution. Each collapsed faster than the last because information moves faster, because modern systems are more interconnected, because once confidence is lost, there's no time to recover. Phase 4, the fragmentation. The empire breaks apart. Regions declare independence. Provinces stop sending tax revenue. Military units refuse orders or defect. The central government loses control. For Rome, provinces became independent kingdoms. Gaul, Spain, Britain, North Africa, all gone. The Roman Empire shrank to just Italy, and then that fell, too. For France, the empire fragmented immediately. Colonies in Africa and Asia began independence movements. The French government couldn't hold them. For the Soviet Union, the republics left. Ukraine, Belarus, the Baltics, Central Asia, all gone. The Soviet Union went from 15 republics to 0 in months. Fragmentation is inevitable because the empire can't afford to hold itself together anymore. The military can't be paid, the bureaucracy can't function, and regions decide they're better off on their own. Phase 5, the freefall. This is the darkest phase. The currency collapses completely. Hyperinflation or deflation. Either way, money becomes worthless. The economy seizes up. Supply chains break. Food becomes scarce. Energy becomes unreliable. The government loses legitimacy. People stop obeying laws. Crime explodes. Warlords or militias take over regions. The state cannot maintain order. For Rome, this was 452–476 AD starvation, barbarian raids, no functioning government. For France, this was 1940 to 1944, occupation, collaboration, resistance, chaos. For the Soviet Union, this was 1991 to 1998, hyperinflation, economic collapse, crime syndicates, regional warlords. The freefall phase is when ordinary people suffer the most because the systems they depended on, currency, law, supply chains, don't work anymore and they have to survive in a failed state. Phase 6, the reset. Eventually, a new order emerges. Sometimes it's a new government. Sometimes it's foreign occupation. Sometimes it's fragmentation into smaller states. But the old empire is dead, and whatever comes next is fundamentally different. For Rome, the reset was the medieval kingdoms that replaced the empire. For France, the reset was liberation by the Allies and becoming a second-tier power. For the Soviet Union, the reset was Russia and 14 independent republics. The reset is not a return to the old system. It's a new reality. And the people who lived in the empire have to adapt to a world where their country no longer exists. 6 phases. Denial, credibility break, cascade, fragmentation, free fall, reset. Every empire that collapses goes through them, and the United States is entering phase 2 right now. Let me show you where we are. Phase 1, denial, is over. We've been in denial for 20 years. The 2008 financial crisis, the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, COVID money printing, massive debt, political dysfunction. But the government, the media, the elites kept saying it was fine. We're still the strongest economy, the strongest military. The dollar is safe. Trust the system. That denial is ending. Too many people see the cracks now. Phase 2, the credibility break is beginning. The withdrawal from Afghanistan in August 2021 was a credibility break. 20 years, $2 trillion, the most advanced military on earth, and we lost. The Taliban took over in 11 days. Our Afghan allies were abandoned. The scenes at Kabul airport were chaos. Afghans falling from planes, 13 US service members killed. The withdrawal was a disaster. And the world watched, China watched, Russia watched, Iran watched, and they saw weakness. That's a credibility break. The moment when reputation dies and reality is exposed. But that's not the only credibility break happening. The dollar is losing reserve currency status. In 2000, 73% of global reserves were in dollars. Today, it's 58% and falling. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, are building alternative payment systems. China and Russia trade in yuan and rubles, not dollars. Saudi Arabia is accepting yuan for oil. That's a credibility break for the currency. The United States is missing military recruitment targets by 25%. Standards are being lowered. Readiness is declining. The Navy has 290 ships. China has over 350. The Air Force has the oldest fleet in its history. Equipment is aging. Modernization is behind schedule. That's a credibility break for the military. Trust in American institutions is at all-time lows. Congress has a 20% approval rating. The Supreme Court is seen as partisan. The media is distrusted. Elections are contested. That's a credibility break for governance. We're at the beginning of Phase 2, and if history is a guide, Phase 3, the cascade, comes next. Oh, and it comes fast. Let me show you what the cascade will look like for the United States. Because once it starts, it accelerates exponentially, and by the time people realize it's happening, it's too late to stop. The cascade starts with a trigger event. It could be a currency crisis, a major military defeat, a debt default, a political crisis. Whatever the trigger, it exposes the system's fragility. And once exposed, confidence collapses. Here's one scenario. China moves on Taiwan. The US has committed to defending Taiwan. Our entire strategic position in Asia depends on it. But wargame simulations show we lose. Not because China's military is better, because we can't get enough forces there fast enough. Because China can sink our carriers with hypersonic missiles we can't defend against. Because our supply lines are too long and too vulnerable. If China invades Taiwan and the US fails to stop it, that's a credibility break that triggers the cascade. Our allies in Asia, Japan, South Korea, the Philippines realize American guarantees are worthless. They start making deals with China. Our military dominance in the Pacific is over. Our technological edge, which depended on Taiwanese semiconductors, is gone. The dollar, which was backed by American military power, loses reserve currency status rapidly. Foreign holders dump dollars. The currency falls, inflation explodes. Or here's another scenario. A debt crisis. The US owes $36 trillion. We're paying $1 trillion a year in interest. That's more than we spend on defense, and the debt keeps growing. At some point, bond markets lose confidence. They demand higher interest rates to lend to the US. Interest rates spike. The government has to choose. Default on the debt, print money to pay the debt and cause hyperinflation, or cut spending so drastically it causes economic collapse. All three options are catastrophic. If the US defaults, the dollar loses reserve currency status immediately. If we print money, hyperinflation destroys savings and purchasing power. If we cut spending, the economy collapses and unemployment explodes. Any of those trigger the cascade. Or here's a third scenario, a political crisis. The 2024 election is contested. Both sides claim victory. Neither side accepts the results. States refuse to certify. The Supreme Court is deadlocked. Protests turn into riots. The military is asked to intervene. Some units obey, others refuse. The government fractures. And when the government can't maintain order, the cascade begins. Regions start ignoring federal authority. States make their own trade deals. The dollar becomes worthless because nobody trusts the government backing it. The empire fragments in real time. I'm not predicting which scenario happens. I'm showing you that there are multiple paths to the cascade, and once it starts, it follows the same pattern every empire has followed. Allies abandon us, enemies act without fear. The currency collapses, social order breaks down, and the empire fragments. How fast does it happen? Rome's cascade took 66 years. France's took 4 weeks. The Soviet Union's took 900 days. For the United States, it will be faster than the Soviet Union because information moves instantly now, because global markets are interconnected, because once confidence breaks, there's no time to adjust. I'd estimate the cascade takes 18 to 36 months from trigger event to fragmentation. That's how long you have from the moment it starts to the moment the United States as we know it ceases to exist. Let me show you what that looks like on the ground, what you'll experience if you're living through the American collapse. First, The currency crisis. The dollar loses value rapidly. Inflation that was 5% becomes 20%, then 50%, then triple digits. Your savings lose half their value in a year. Prices double every few months. Gas goes from $4 a gallon to $20. Groceries that cost $100 cost $500. Your paycheck, if you still have a job, can't keep up. You're getting poorer every month, and there's nothing you can do about it. Foreigns become unaffordable. Electronics, medicine, anything imported becomes luxury items. Supply chains break down. Stores run out of inventory. Shortages become common. You can't find basic goods, not because they don't exist, because the logistics system has collapsed. Second, social order breaks down. The government can't pay police. Crime explodes. Theft, robbery, carjackings, home invasions. You're not safe in your own home. Private security becomes common for the wealthy. Everyone else is on their own. Protests and riots become frequent. People are angry, scared, and desperate. Cities, but become dangerous. Some people flee to rural areas. Others fortify their homes. Trust in institutions is dead. The government makes promises. Nobody believes them. Laws are passed. Nobody obeys them. The social contract is broken. Third, regional fragmentation. States start ignoring federal authority. California makes trade deals directly with China. Texas talks about independence. Regions realize they don't need Washington anymore, and Washington can't enforce anything because the federal government is broke. Military bases close. Troops are brought home because there's no money to maintain them. The global empire contracts to the homeland, and even the homeland starts to fracture. Fourth, the economic collapse. Unemployment explodes. Businesses close. Banks fail. Your 401k is worthless. Your pension is gone. Real estate crashes because nobody can buy homes. The stock market collapses. Anyone who had wealth in dollars loses it. The only people who survive are those who had assets and things that hold value. Real estate, commodities, foreign currency, gold. But most Americans have everything in dollars, and when the dollar dies, they're wiped out. Fifth, the survival phase. You're not worrying about politics or policy anymore. You're worrying about food, water, safety. Can you protect your family? Do you have supplies? Do you have community? Because the systems you relied on don't work anymore, and you're on your own. That's what collapse looks like. Not slow decline, rapid, violent, chaotic disintegration, and it happens faster than you can process. Now here's the critical question. Can it be stopped? Can the United States avoid the cascade? Technically yes, practically no. To avoid the cascade, the US would need to do things no declining empire has ever done. We'd need to admit the problem. Accept that we're in decline, that our power is not what it used to be, that the empire is unsustainable. No empire has ever done that, because admitting decline means losing power faster. Allies hedge immediately, enemies attack. Admitting weakness is suicide for an empire. We'd need to massively cut military spending, close bases, end commitments, withdraw from empire, accept that we can't police the world anymore. But withdrawing looks like defeat, and no superpower willingly chooses to look weak. We'd need to fix the debt, which means either massive spending cuts or massive tax increases. Both are politically impossible. Cutting spending destroys the economy. Raising taxes triggers capital flight. There's no good option. We'd need to rebuild manufacturing, bring supply chains home, restore productive capacity. That takes decades. We don't have decades. We'd need to restore social cohesion, fix political dysfunction, rebuild trust in institutions. Nobody knows how to do that. The country is too divided. So no, practically speaking, we can't stop the cascade, because stopping it requires accepting reality and making hard choices that no one wants to make. And by the time the crisis forces those choices, it's too late. The cascade is already underway. Here's what you should understand. This isn't about politics. It's not about left or right, Republican or Democrat. This is about math. Empires that spend beyond their means collapse. Empires that debase their currency collapse. Empires that overextend militarily collapse. The United States has done all three. The pattern is locked in. The question isn't if, it's when. And when it comes, it will come fast. Faster than Rome, faster than France, faster than the Soviet Union. Because modern systems fail faster. Because global markets move faster. Because confidence can collapse in hours, not years. You're living at the end of the American empire. Most people don't realize it yet. They think this is normal, that we'll recover, that America is eternal, but empires aren't eternal. They all end. And the United States is ending now. The signs are everywhere. The credibility breaks are happening. The cascade is starting. And within the next decade, the United States, as you know, it will not exist. Not because of war, not because of invasion, because of economic collapse. Because we followed the same pattern every failed empire has followed, and the math caught up. If this changed how you see what's coming, subscribe. Because when the cascade accelerates, when the collapse becomes undeniable, you'll want to understand what's happening and why. The pattern is written in history. The Collapse has happened 3 times before, and it's happening again. The only question is whether you'll see it coming or whether you'll be like the Romans in 409 AD, the French in May 1940, the Soviets in 1988, believing everything is fine, right up until it isn't. History has the answers, and the answers say the cascade is starting.